The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1989. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1989, number 5 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to consumer protection, requiring disclosures relating to ticket sales, the third engrossment.
To the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, House File 1989 is the Ticketing Fairness Act bill. It's a bill that I started working on over a year ago after the Taylor Swift Eras tour tickets went on sale. I will spare you the song lyrics today as I present the bill, although if it happens naturally, that is okay with me. I know Representative Nash suggested I make everybody friendship bracelets, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to do that for you. But really, the genesis of this bill, like I said, happened after my experience and thousands of others trying to get Taylor Swift tickets. Many of us signed up early to get the advance verified fans ability to purchase tickets, and we were told that we would get a code for pre-sale, and that signing up for tickets that way would mean that we were more likely as fans to get tickets than scalpers. Well, needless to say, many of us never got that code and weren't able to get tickets when they went on sale. And for the people who did get the pre-sale code, the process was an utter disaster. I have a friend who got the code, got in the virtual line, waited all day, and I'll say that I know that from my own kids being students at the time, there was a lot of wasted time in school with people on their phones and at work on their computers trying to get tickets. So you wait in line all day, you get in this virtual queue, and then when it's your turn, a lot of people were getting booted out of that virtual queue and then having to start over again. When others who were lucky enough to get in, got to get to their tickets. I have a friend, Laura, and she had set a price for $500 for a ticket, which is a pretty high price. So she really wanted to see this concert and get good seats. And when she got to the end, she realized there was a $100 fee tacked on to that $500 ticket. And at that point, it was too late for her to really back out because, as you know, a lot of these platforms, the way they work, they'll tell you you have like 2 minutes left to complete the transaction. Or if you go back and try to look for another ticket, there might not be those tickets left anymore. So a lot of people were sort of stuck paying a lot more in these fees than they really had bargained for when they set out their budget for this concert. And while the Taylor Swift ticketing failure displayed many of the problems in the ticketing industry, anyone who's purchased tickets for events recently knows that this is not an isolated event. Last year in 2023, I wanted to get tickets for the Big Ten women's basketball tournament in Minneapolis. I am a big Caitlin Clark fan, Iowa Hawkeye fan, and I was really excited to get those tickets, and I ended up paying an 83% increase based on fees to the cost of those tickets. So after 1989 was introduced last year, we knew there was going to be a lot of stakeholder involvement that needed to take place. So over the interim, Senator Klein and I worked with many, many stakeholders on this. We talked to a lot of the different sports teams, a lot of the venues in the whole state, actually, both small and large sizes. And so the bill before you today has all of that feedback taken into consideration. So the Ticketing Fairness Act does the following. It requires all-in pricing whenever a ticket is sold or resold. So this really will allow the consumer to know upfront when they start to look for tickets what the total cost is going to be. They're not going to have to wait till the end to figure that out. It ensures that consumers will receive proof of their purchase within 24 hours and will be told of the refund policy. It prevents the use of deceptive websites that trick consumers into thinking those websites belong to the actual venue or the primary seller of the ticket. It bans speculative ticketing, which is the process that these ticket resellers use to sell tickets that haven't even been on sale and they don't have in their possession. And then it prohibits the use of bots to purchase tickets and other unfair practices that puts tickets in the hands of scalpers over consumers. One of the great things about living in Minnesota is that we have wonderful entertainment opportunities, from concerts to theater performances to all kinds of different sporting events. And the Ticketing Fairness Act seeks to provide a fair and transparent process for Minnesotans so that they can enjoy these events. And I really look forward to answering any questions that you have about this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Moeller moves to amend House File Number 1989, the third engrossment. The amendment is coded DE6.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this DE is just putting the language of this bill in alignment with the Senate. It's not too different from the bill that you have before you, but we're just lining it up with the Senate language. It has a few other technical differences, but it is very similar to what we've got before you. Thank you.
Discussion to the amendment. There being no discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. The amendment does prevail and it is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. Seeing there are no further amendments, the clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 1989, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill is amended. To the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Mueller, terrific bill. It does a good job of protecting consumers who are purchasing their tickets. This has been a big issue. There are just two small things that I'd like to touch on to see if it's in conference, that we could clarify just a little bit. And one of those is, so Ticketmaster owns a reseller, and they also sell tickets directly, and they own over 370 venues. So we need to make sure that we don't want scalpers to be reselling the tickets, but when you buy a ticket, people expect it to be their ticket. And one concern is because Ticketmaster has all these venues and they sell tickets directly and they profit off that sale and the resale, is for other resale platforms, we want to make sure that they are protected in case Ticketmaster decides, well, this venue doesn't allow for unauthorized ticket reselling. We're going to revoke a ticket if they believe it is bought from a reseller that isn't from Ticketmaster. So there's a little bit of a concern there. I don't think this bill necessarily pushes it in that direction, but I think we need to protect the secondary reseller market, because we've seen in other industries when a business has multiple arms, they're able to use their market power to the detriment of the consumer. And the second issue that I think needs just a tiny bit of clarification is on the deceptive presentation aspect of the bill, to where, yeah, we don't want a reseller masquerading as another website. That's ridiculous. We don't want them tricking consumers. But they should be able to use specific logos to identify the products which they are selling. And there is some concern in the industry that this, in this bill, is a little too broad, and it does not make that allowed. So I guess a question you might be able to answer, and you can answer in your closing, I don't ask you to yield, is can resellers still use those logos and images to demonstrate the ticket? They're not trying to pretend they're Target Center, but they want to make sure people know this ticket is at XL for the Minnesota Wild game, and not just having to put that all in text because they don't want to run afoul of this deception description provision in the bill. So those are two concerns, but really having consumers know what they're getting and being able to having that certainty, this is a bill I believe is a step in the right direction, but it could use those two little clarifications. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Representative Mueller, thank you for this bill. You and I started talking about this bill about a year ago. We've had some fun with it in committee over the year, and 1989 has certain significance as the bill number. We found out coincidentally with a primary person that this bill is unofficially named after here in the Minnesota House. I will not mention that person's name because I may end up owing royalties to that person for using their name. But nonetheless, I want to underscore what Representative West said. I think those are important provisions. Sometimes you want to get all the way across the water, and sometimes you can only get halfway there. And I think you've got us halfway there with helping clean up the line and making it a true line and giving people the products that they would be looking for. I am concerned about, in addition to what Representative West said, if I buy a ticket and I can't go, I want to be able to stay in control of that ticket. And I think that we have to define that in the state of Minnesota, who actually owns that ticket. Because otherwise it's like a license and I might be denied the access to the arena, even if I have legitimately gone through the steps to purchase the ticket. So I'd like to get clarification. And I think if I want to give it to my neighbor because I can't go, or to an employee, I should have the ability to do that like we did, dare I say, back in the old days when we had paper tickets on here. And I also want to call out one other thing that I think is extremely important, Representative Mueller, is you have taken a surgical approach with a problem. Right? We have seen some issues on here with some deceptive practices, perhaps in the past, with vendors and in this arena. And you've identified a problem. You've put some bumper guards around it, and you said, here is how we deal with this. I really appreciate your surgical approach to this in the ticket arena, and not a one-size-fits-all approach that we may be seeing at some point in this legislature and legislation that tries to fix all problems for everyone with the same language. And as any parent will tell you, no two children are created the same. Each one has its own personality. Each one has its own challenges in raising. And when you take the time to work with each of those children individually, you get a much better product than you do if you try to take and treat both those children the same way with a one-size-fits-all approach. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Moeller.
The member from Crow Wing, Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just had a quick comment. I think it's nice that we have a number of members rising in support of this bill, and I think there's maybe one or two Swifties in the room. I happen to not be one of them, but that's okay. I just am thankful, I guess. I want to be, I should count my blessings. It's the first time in a while that I think my DFL friends are worried about fees or fee increases. And I just want to be cognizant of the scenario we see around the state. There's a lot of unfortunate examples of fees, boat fee increases, license fee increase, registration fee increases. I'm looking forward to hopefully a Government Fee Fairness Act introduced sometime soon. We'll see if that happens. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the representative of the bill, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks for the comments. I do just want to address that a couple of the comments about improvements for the bill are certainly things that we have considered already and actually are taken care of by the bill. To the point about Ticketmaster owning venues, we definitely don't want to give them a leg up over anybody in the industry, but I will say that they only own 2. It's my understanding they only have 2 in the state, so we're certainly willing to look further into that, but if comes to be a problem with that, I think that's something we can easily correct next year. I'll also just note that as part of the comments regarding deceptive practices and still wanting to make sure that the reseller can describe adequately the ticket that's being resold, that is taken care of in the bill, and actually got that feedback from that resale market. If you look at the DE at lines 3.18 to 3.26, and you'll notice that the combination of text, images, trademarks, et cetera, that are used to associated with the place of entertainment, so it's pretty limited to that. And then there's some language after that that talks about what is not prohibited by that online ticket marketplace to adequately describe what it is that they are actually selling to the consumer. And then finally, as far as any concerns about what an individual can do with their ticket, this bill applies, if you look at the definitions, it applies to online ticket marketplaces, operators, and ticket resellers. Those are specifically defined. Those are not individuals. We also at line 3.27 have some exclusionary language for cells that are under an aggregate of $5,000 because we wanted to make sure that like churches and school events and that sort of thing didn't have to necessarily follow all of the all-in pricing requirements in this bill, and that would hold true for individuals as well. And then there's other language in the bill related to season ticket holders. So we have really taken a lot of time to consider a lot of these issues in working with the stakeholders. I'm really thrilled with the shape the bill is in. I promised you I wasn't going to make any Taylor Swift references, but I would love to get some bipartisan support on the bill, and I have a blank space, and I'm glad to write your name. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Will the clerk call the name of the member voting remotely?
Daniels.
Daniels votes yea.
Daniels votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
Can't find it. Oh, there it is.
There being 112 yeas and 18 nays, the bill is passed as amended and it's titled agreed to.